The letter arrives on a Tuesday. You're not expecting anything unusual. Maybe a bill, maybe a grocery store coupon. You pull it from the mailbox, and the return address says Social Security Administration. You figure it's routine, you open it, and then your stomach drops because the letter says you owe them money, thousands of dollars, sometimes tens of thousands. Money they paid you, legally, correctly, directly deposited into your account. Money they now want back. And buried in the fine print, almost easy to miss, is a line that tells you they've already started collecting it. Not after a trial, not after an appeal. Starting now, from your next check. This is not a scam. This is the federal government. And it is happening to retirees across this country right now. People who did nothing wrong, who followed every rule they knew, who spent decades paying into the system and now find themselves fighting to keep what they were promised. If you are on Social Security, or if you plan to be, what I'm about to tell you could be the most important thing you hear this year. Here is the trap that most people don't see coming. Social Security has always had the authority to reclaim money it believes was paid in error. These are called overpayments, and they happen more than you'd ever expect. A change in your income, a change in your spouse's earnings, a reporting delay inside the SSA's own systems, a clerical mistake made years ago that nobody caught. The SSA sends you your monthly payment, and then, sometimes years later, their records are audited or updated, and suddenly a flag appears. They say you received more than you were entitled to. And here is the part that will make your blood run cold. Under current law and policy, once the SSA determines you were overpaid, they have the legal right to recoup that money by withholding your future benefits. 100%, the entire monthly check, gone. Until the debt is paid. For years, there was a built-in protection. The SSA typically withheld only 10% of your monthly benefit while you repaid the balance. It was painful, but survivable. That protection is largely gone now. The agency has shifted toward full withholding as its default collection method. Your entire monthly check, the income you've structured your entire retirement around, can be reduced to zero while you fight the claim. And many retirees don't even find out until the money stops arriving. That is the trap. You didn't steal anything. You spent the money the way you were supposed to, but you are now being asked to return it immediately, without mercy, without a grace period. And if you don't act fast, the consequences compound. Let's understand why this happens, because the cause is not what most people assume. People hear overpayment and they think fraud. They think someone was gaming the system, hiding income, cheating, and yes, that exists. But the vast majority of Social Security overpayments are administrative. They are the product of a bureaucratic system that moves slowly, communicates poorly, and holds the beneficiary responsible for errors they had no part in creating. Here's how it works in practice. The SSA receives earnings information from employers, but often with significant delays. Someone goes back to work part-time. Their employer reports the wages months later. By the time the SSA updates their record, payments have already gone out that exceeded the allowable earnings limit. The beneficiary didn't know they were receiving too much. The SSA didn't catch it in time. But in the eyes of the law, the recipient holds the liability. Or consider someone on disability benefits who improves medically, returns to work, and eventually transitions to retirement benefits. The file is complex. Dates overlap. The system sometimes miscalculates the transition window. Overpayments appear years later, or a widow. Her husband passes. She's grieving. She's managing his affairs. She doesn't know his last two Social Security deposits, already in the account, are supposed to be returned. She uses the money for funeral expenses. 2 years later, a letter arrives. None of these people intended to take anything that wasn't theirs, but they are all sitting across the table from the federal government owing money they no longer have. Now here is where the danger deepens, in 3 layers. Layer 1 is the timing problem. When the SSA sends an overpayment notice, the clock starts immediately. You typically have 60 days to respond, request a waiver, or file an appeal. Most people, especially older Americans who are not accustomed to navigating federal benefits appeals, don't act within that window. They're confused. They think it's a mistake that will correct itself. They wait, And the moment that 60-day window closes without a response, the SSA is legally authorized to begin withholding. Full amount, no further warning. Many retirees have woken up to find their deposit simply didn't come. No phone call, no second letter. The money is just gone. Layer 2 is the look-back window. Here is something that shocks most people when they learn it. The Social Security Administration has no statute of limitations on overpayment recovery. None. They can go back 10 years, 20 years. They have gone back further. If their records show a miscalculation from the early 2000s, they can issue a demand today in 2025 for money paid during the Bush administration. You read that correctly. Money you received legally 2 decades ago can become a debt today, with interest. And with the full force of federal collection authority behind it. This is not a warning about what might happen someday. It is happening now. Reports from across the country describe retirees receiving notices for overpayments going back 15 and 20 years, amounts they have no way to reconstruct, payments they have no memory of, and demands that arrive without a payment plan, without a negotiation offer, just a number and a deadline. Layer 3 is the cascading effect on spouses and survivors. When one spouse owes an overpayment debt and that spouse dies, the SSA can in some circumstances pursue recovery from the survivor's benefits. Not always, not automatically, but the risk is real. And the fear alone, the uncertainty, is devastating to people who are already grieving. More commonly, a surviving spouse finds that the deceased's final 1 or 2 Social Security payments were direct deposited after the date of death. Federal law requires those payments to be returned if the account has already been closed or the funds spent, and they often have been because grief doesn't pause for paperwork. The survivor now has a liability they didn't know existed. Let me show you what this looks like in real numbers. Take Margaret. She's 71. She worked part-time at a garden center after retirement, earning about $12,000 a year. She thought she was well within her earnings limit, but the SSA's records showed that between her wages and a small pension payment that was misclassified in their system, her combined income briefly pushed her over the threshold for 2 separate years. The SSA calculated she had been overpaid by $9,400 over those 2 years. She received her first notice in March. By May, 62 days later, because she waited for her daughter's advice, her $800 monthly check was reduced to zero. Full withholding. She had no warning. She had no backup plan. Now take Robert, same age, similar situation, but Robert's daughter happened to see a video like this one 6 months earlier, and she told him what to do. When Robert received his notice, he responded within 2 weeks. He filed for a waiver, a formal written request arguing that repayment would cause financial hardship and that he had not knowingly caused the overpayment. The SSA has the authority to forgive overpayments entirely if the beneficiary is not at fault and cannot afford to repay without hardship. Robert's waiver was approved. He owed nothing. His checks continued without interruption. Same dollar amount, same type of error, opposite outcomes. The only difference was that Robert knew the waiver existed and filed it in time. Margaret is still fighting. So what do? What does protection actually look like? Step 1. If you receive any letter from the Social Security Administration that mentions an overpayment, do not wait. Do not assume it is a mistake that will resolve itself. Open it that day. Read it carefully. Note the date it was issued because your 60-day window begins then, not when you received it. Step 2. Request your full payment history from the SSA. You can do this online at ssa.gov or by calling their national number. Get a record of every payment made to your account going back as far as they will provide. You need to be able to challenge any calculation they make. Step 3. File for a waiver immediately. This is not an admission of wrongdoing. The waiver process exists specifically for situations where the beneficiary was not at fault and repayment would cause financial hardship. Living primarily on Social Security income qualifies as hardship in most cases. File this in writing. Keep a copy. Send it certified mail. Step 4. request a reconsideration simultaneously. You can challenge the SSA's underlying calculation, the claim that you were overpaid in the first place. These are two separate tracks, and you can pursue both at the same time. A waiver says, even if I owe this, I cannot pay it. A reconsideration says, I don't believe I owe this at all. Step 5. If your monthly check is at risk, contact a local Social Security office or a benefits counselor through your state health insurance assistance program, what's known as SHIP, before that 60-day window closes. These counselors are free. They know the process. They can help you navigate the paperwork in a way that protects your income. Step 6. Review your earnings history every year. If you have income from any source, a part-time job, a pension, rental income, investment withdrawals, confirm with the SSA how it affects your benefit level. Prevention is the only absolute protection. Here is the warning I want you to carry with you. The Social Security Administration is not your enemy, but the system they administer is not designed with your protection in mind. It is designed for processing scale, not individual fairness. And when their system makes a mistake, even a decades-old mistake, the consequences land on you. The retirees losing checks right now did not make reckless choices. They did not game the system. They trusted that the agency sending their monthly payment had calculated it correctly. That trust, in many cases, has cost them thousands of dollars and months of financial terror. You do not have to be next. Know that the waiver exists. Know that you have 60 days. Know that a reconsideration is your right. Know that these notices can be challenged, appealed, and sometimes fully dismissed, but only if you act. If you are on Social Security or you have a parent who is or a spouse who is, save this video right now. Send it to someone who needs it before a letter arrives that changes everything, and subscribe for more retirement warnings that most people never hear until it's too late.